Our conversation with Greg Brown of the Pirates is brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Greg, you should have heard that setup I did. It was really good.
I guess I must have been embarrassed by it. I couldn't listen. I was so humbled. I wish I had heard it.
Oh, I built you up big time.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, you have to be just chomping at the bit to call some baseball, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, this is what we do. It's I've been doing it for a long time, going back to really I started calling baseball games back in 1989 in the minor leagues in Buffalo. So this is a unique summer for all of us, of course, and for me in particular, just because I'm out of my element when I'm not calling baseball games, especially this time of year. We should be deep into the season. In fact, around this time is when we start kind of, hoping, as I've said so many times before, as you kind of approach the All-Star break in years past. And this goes back to conversations we always have in spring training as you try and figure out what kind of team you have and could you contend. My belief is always that any team that is around the 500 mark at this time of year and can hover there and get close to whether it's the division lead or a postseason wild card spot. If you're around there around the All-Star break, you've got a good chance that your general manager is going to make a move to put you over the top.
Yeah.
And so around this time of year is when you kind of start looking at the standings. In this case, the Pirates. If you're again around 500, you think, okay, we got a chance. And we don't have that opportunity. And I was really looking forward to this year because I thought if things fell right, the Pirates did have a chance to surprise a lot of people.
Well, the interesting thing is that ever since the Kutch years, this is the time of the year when the Pirates started to really get hot.
Yeah, that is true. McCutchen was historically a slow starter, so you almost conceded the month of April and into May, and then he would and he would get absolutely. There were months of Junes in the past with him that just completely on fire. And last year it was the month of May for Josh Bell, where he was setting Pirate records and major league records for that matter, for his historic month of May that really gave us a lot of hope. And as he would admit later, toward the second half of June, and it was around this time where he just started maybe thinking too much and not reacting, and fell into a slide, and that coincided with the Pirates slide, and what turned out to be kind of a miserable second half. It was just absolutely awful, the second half last year for the Pirates. And to boot, that's kind of why we were looking to turn the page, clean the slate, so we wouldn't have to talk about last year anymore. We could look forward. And that's another reason it is so frustrating not to be playing right now.
But the good thing is that now we can look forward at least a little bit at this year's edition, and the team is going to gather at PNC Park come Wednesday. Of course, everything is tentative in this day and age, and you'll soon be able to call some baseball. But what's it going to be like for you this year? Am I correct in understanding that you won't be taking road trips?
Yeah, as of now, they've told us, Major League Baseball is they put together a 100-page manual for proper protocol for return to play, and they're adamant about the fact they are going to limit the traveling parties for each major league club, and so just absolutely, totally essential, including the players, manager, and coaches, and limited number of training staff. But broadcasters will not be traveling with the teams, at least at the outset, and I assume for all 60 games and into the postseason. So in terms of, I've been asked that question, what's it going to be like? I just don't know. I don't. The only thing I can relate it to maybe is, when I thought about wanting to become a broadcaster and the times where I'd actually be sitting in a quiet living room in my home, watching a game, turn down the sound so I didn't hear the announcers of a national football or baseball or basketball game, and start calling that on my own in a quiet living room. So that's the only thing I could give. Again, I've been asked that a few times recently, and I will say that there have been, going back to my minor league days, there have been times where I would be in a tiny broadcast booth in Norfolk, Virginia, calling the Tidewater Tides, 3 rows back behind home plate, really amidst a handful of spectators, and calling the game without much fanfare whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, anyone around could hear me, including the players and coaches. So I guess those are the 2 closest for me personally.
I used to vacation in Newport News. I'd go to Tides games, so I would.
Oh, there you go. You know what I'm talking about then.
Yeah.
Back in those days, it was a horrible ballpark. Now they got a new yard that's spectacular. But yeah, back then it was quiet. Let's put it that way.
All right, so let's look at this year's edition of the Bucs. There's not a lot of people with a lot of hope for the Pirates, but I sort of like the makeup. I'm sorry if that goes against everybody's tuition, or intuition, but I sort of like what I'm seeing out of the Pirates, at least in terms of leadership, and both from the manager's position and from some of these guys, the players.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really kind of starts with the manager. I don't know him well, obviously. But what I do know of him so far, he has been just affable. He's been real. I relate the story that I oftentimes in spring training, I go through the clubhouse, say hello to a player or two and a coach or whatnot, and then head out toward the field. And to get to the field the quickest, the setup at what is the McKechnie Clubhouse at Lecom Park, you walk by the manager's office. It's the last door on the left before you open the double doors that get you out toward the field. And I just don't like to bother those guys. And even if it is spring training, I just know that their plates are full. And so I won't stop in. I'll just kind of look that way. And if he's looking at me, I'll say hello. And if not, that's fine. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, a handful of times, I would kind of walk by his door, and he was kind of down writing notes or whatnot, and I'd walk past, and I'd hear, "Good morning, Brownie," and "Good morning, Derek." Derek Shelton, of course, or "Good morning, Shelty." I mean, to me, that just speaks volumes of the type of person he is. He's real. He's legit. He's a good person. And he doesn't play favorites. It doesn't matter what you do for a living or who you are. He's just a down-to-earth human. And the players respond to that. I'm convinced, to your point about not going against convention or going against conventional wisdom about this team and how it's going to perform. I think that his attitude and the coaching staff bringing fun back into that clubhouse and on that field, legitimate fun, where they're loose. I think you play better when your boss, in any walk of life, my opinion, and there are ways to motivate. My opinion is the best way to motivate is through positive reinforcement, but there are ways to motivate either by being on someone constantly, harsh, looking over the shoulder, constantly micromanaging, and then there's the type that says, okay, I trust this guy, I'm going to let him go, and because it's baseball and it's sports, it should be fun. It really should be. We are not, I've said before, it seems to me like in years past we acted like we were sending troops to Afghanistan. This is a baseball team. And he's treated the players that way. They responded. It was only spring training. So I'm anxious to see it put into effect when it counts for real. It
is going to be really interesting to actually look at players and see what's going on. You look at the Pirates lineup, you know there are some areas that need improvement. You know there are some really, really interesting prospects in that lineup. You look at guys like Polanco. Can Polanco come back and be Gregory Polanco? And all of the different questions, the sophomore seasons for Newman and for Reynolds. The pitching staff, what does it look like? That appears to be the area that's really going to need to come through for the Pirates. And finally, you get to start talking about things like that again. Must be pretty exciting.
It is, and I also, in a warped, weird sense, am looking forward to calling these games. One at PNC Park when we're home, of course, but on the road in a studio with no one around. because much like the season itself, it's going to be just kind of throwing caution to the wind and having fun. It's going to be the asterisk season for all time. There's nothing like it. There will be nothing like it in the future, I don't believe, at least in our lifetimes. So in a 60-game sprint, anything can happen. And I like Derek Shelton because I think he's going to be a type of guy that is going to be looking forward to rolling the dice and being unafraid. He's going to be very unconventional, I believe. And I think he's going to be able to maneuver around the starting and the relievers that we have, the starting pitchers and the relievers, to get this team more wins than even Vegas anticipates in a 60-game schedule. Anything can happen in 60 games. You don't, 162-game baseball season. The reason baseball separates itself from other clubs and other sports, I should say, is because that marathon forces teams and organizations to be strong from top to bottom. You have to have depth. A long, grueling season will expose scabs and your the limitations of perhaps a small market team. Where 60 games, anything can happen. You look at years past. Look at any 60-game stretch of any Pirate season. You'll find a team that played very well in a 60-game stretch.
Yeah.
And if they can do that starting July 24th, then we've got something to talk about.
We sure will, and we'll look forward to talking with you again. Greg Brown, thanks for coming on board with us today.
Hey, thanks a million for that great introduction, too, by the way, that I missed.
And make sure you wish Wayner a happy birthday today, okay?
I will do. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye now. There's Greg Brown of the Pittsburgh Pirates getting set to